hand up, and maybe that's why some of you are here, but it's how to build products. We'll talk about how to build product today.
And so reason why we think this is a very interesting topic is a lot has changed in the world, as everyone knows. I think just in the last even 24, 48 hours, even ChatGPT released a new product around the ability to generate images and things much faster. And so there's been a flurry of even Twitter activity about like, oh my God, this changes the whole dynamic of not only making ads, making presentations, even graphic artists. It just kind of changed the landscape, and everyone's like, oh my God, like you need to learn how to operate differently. What I would say is you're going to probably see headlines like that coming every few weeks, every few, sometimes days, but definitely within months. And so the acceleration of that, and so it's going to leave you spinning saying, what the hell do I do? I was just reading last night, I guess Bill Gates was in some interview, and he was talking about how only 3 jobs will remain as is, and every other job will disappear to tech. So that he's got his own biases, but you're going to see more and more people just talking about how your job is done. You're going to lose your job. You're going to be replaced. And so there's a lot of fear out there. And I think what happens and shows up in any time when disruptive things happen, you get all these, so it's called a window of inefficiency. You get this, oh my God, everything's going to be better, which ends up usually not being as true. Or, oh my God, everything's going to die, which also ends up not being true. But as it normalizes, it's not always right in the middle. It's going to matter in the nuances. And so how do you get prepared for that? How do you train it? How do you focus on building the right skills to be effective as an individual? So some of that I think will be interesting here. So we're going to go into this class on thinking of how to build products, but with especially this big change in technology and what's happening. And initially, when we looked up how to build products, just a Google image, it's the thing on the left, right? You see using your computer and individual, you don't even see the person's face, but then found another image and put that on top.
Thank you. Oh, did we just cut out?
Did I just cut it?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Your camera froze and then.
Oh, there we go. It's coming back.
Okay.
Oh, wow. It's like back in, guys. We're back in.
Sorry about
I
that.
don't see you in the Zoom yet.
Yeah, just give us a sec.
Hold on a sec.
Just like goodness. There's some new faces. There's some more new faces. Good to see you guys. Yeah, welcome.
All right, so we cut out for a sec, but
I
so
don't
we,
see your camera.
you don't see our camera. I see us.
You see you? Okay, let me find you. Maybe you got both.
See the presentation. So we'll talk about this at the very end, towards the end of the slide. I think a lot of people are going more into this, one human plus AI is the future. It's not. I'll tell you again and again, we've met with some of the brightest and best minds that are working in the field. If you operate that the future model is one human plus AI, I promise you, you're gonna get wrecked. Say it again, you're gonna get wrecked. You're gonna have so many blind spots, and you're gonna be driven to do a whole bunch of things that will get you into the wrong place. In essence, you will fail. In the long run, you will fail. And we were talking about this right before the class. And the reason is because AI is a technology that's trained on data. Data is looking backwards. It's like when you drive a car, what comes out of the exhaust pipe is data. And so when you're looking at a world that is full of ambiguity, full of unknown, you're going to see that there's not enough data that's analyzing what's ahead of us and what we're in now. The data is still looking majority backwards. So we'll touch on that topic later. And the only way to navigate successfully in unknown is with another human being. 2 human beings can catch blind spots far better in this current state than just a human with AI. You're going to be driving yourself into these recurring thematic failure points and won't understand why. So the model of the future is 2 human being teams with AI. So 2 human beings, right? Remember we had this whole conversation. A small team of humans plus machine.
Yeah.
It could be robotics, but AI for robotics, okay? So let's go into, sorry.
This is a really interesting, a controversial take. I read this
But last night, and it's like, it kind of blew my mind. Read this.
Okay, so
we'll
the
read it to
controversial
you.
take is that you will get more views, followers, and influence by not making content for years and using the extra time to accomplish something epic. Then make your content. I think what's happened in today's day and age is people work backwards, right? Meaning if I just produce content, right? 100 pieces of content every day, one of them could succeed. And the one that succeeds is the one I'm going to push forward, whether it's in TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever medium you use. And so this notion of quantity, people are going towards volume creation in the off chance one thing goes viral, and then they keep coming up with a methodology to produce more crap in the off chance something goes viral.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating because if you look at the original Twitter with 140 characters, it was who could put out the most pithy statement that then gets liked or shared and forwarded. And so it became this massive competition for the pithiest statement, right? That people pick up and then spread viral. The same thing occurred on Facebook, on Instagram, on videos, the same thing, right? And it is something that, it's like people telling jokes, right? There's space and room for everyone going around telling a couple jokes, and then one of the jokes is funnier than the rest. And yet that has become the bulk of internet content, right? I would say a whole bunch of cat this and little babies cursing, it's just a whole bunch of crap, which is okay, right? To make you laugh. But when that became the driver of the bulk of content, and it's interesting when you look at podcasts and what started to happen with podcasts, the main term is long form podcasts. And the whole idea around long form is that when you talk to someone, right, and hear them talk for hours, right, hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, you're going to get a sense of the real person versus you watch a media clip and it's clipped and edited. You know that you don't get the real person. And so there's a lot of work that's happening now where it's trying to reverse this notion of looking for the wrapping paper, the most optically spreadable, thing that you just create, a joke, a cat meme, whatever, to like going the other way, right? Get down to building something valuable, take the time, do it right before you then start to scale it. And this is the right order of doing things. At the same time, especially with AI, a lot of discussion and talk about the value of original thinkers in the world of GPT thinkers will be disproportionate. Tech is now telling people what to think, what to ask, what to do. And so the value of actually what you think, this is once again coming back to your own opinion, your own thought becoming more important. This is interesting. Thanks to AI, tech companies are going to look more like hedge funds. Fewer employees, highly compensated, huge amounts of operational leverage, ability to scale extremely quickly. I think you'll start seeing this over the next 1 to 2 years, 2+ from now, all bets are off. The whole point being a lot is changing very fast. I think the world has really proven small teams with the power of technology can do a lot. There was an individual years ago that, remember David Rose?
Yeah.
He runs the largest network of angel investors. These are individual investors in this tri-state area. And I remember his original presentation, he would share how the cost to build something in software, when he started, it would take $2 million to actually, that's the kind of capital you needed
To like
build
start something, right?
build a book, to build a product
Mhm.
and to release it. $2 million. And over time, he saw it drop to 20,000, 2,000. Now it's virtually zero. Like it costs you zero to release. Now the time it took before to actually build a product first to release could be 12 months, 18 months. Now it can be an afternoon.
Right.
Right? So when you're thinking about kind of this exponential curve of what's happening, you start to realize there's a lot of change. And so his biggest insight, and this was going back 15 years or so when he shared this, is anything that worked before is doomed to likely be a model that fails now or in the future. Meaning the single biggest mistake people make is it worked before. if it worked before and it worked well, in a time of change, it is the very thing that's gonna doom you. You're gonna fail because you're applying the wrong mental model, the wrong tools, the wrong process that worked in a different time in the current time. And that is a recipe for failure. So,
Yeah.
meaning you have to be mindful, a lot is changing. You have to be light on your feet, light on your mind. This was good. This individual talking about beautiful design is now a commodity. And this is literally since the new update to ChatGPT. I've spent the last 24 hours with ChatGPT 4.0 images, and it's clear we've entered a new reality. Execution is cheap. Ideas are everything.
That alone, so that was the part I was blown away. Like especially, I mean, 27 years at Next Jump. The amount of times I would hear, whether it be board members, investors, and it's all about execution. Ideas are cheap. It's about, can you execute it? Who cares if you have a great idea? If you can't get it done, nobody cares.
Yes.
So when I read this, I was like, wait, what? Like execution is cheap, ideas are everything? Ideas are everything. Like that, if you're,
Yes.
it grew up in the different era, but that blew my mind.
Can I add a correction though?
Yeah.
So, this next part says, for decades, we were told the opposite. Everyone had ideas, few could execute them
Right,
well.
okay.
The ability to turn a concept into reality, separate the winners from the dreamers. Now, a lot of you will say, okay, then I gotta go back to having the best idea. Perfect ideas, once again, are gonna doom you. If you think it's about one shot, one
Right,
idea,
right.
you are gonna fail. I guarantee you will fail. Ideas now are made up of highly, like, rapid iterations. There are big ideas. And then there's hundreds to thousands of iterations being applied because nobody could predict what would happen once you take an idea and put it into the real world. Contact sports with the real world is the only way an idea could work. Adoption matters, and adoption requires rapid iteration. So the old view of ideas is not correct. So this little pithy tweet makes it look like, oh, we're going backwards to the old way now, right? Execution, throw that out. It's not true. It's the speed of iteration matters, and speed of iteration is connected to original thinking, ideas. So
Say that again, speed of iteration matters.
But speed of iteration is connected to original thinking. So going back to the slide before, original thinkers in the world of GPTs, meaning, right, on the right here, right?
Yeah.
Value of original thinkers.
Yeah,
Every iteration is an original thought.
right.
If you're going into, well, I just need to follow the Harvard Business School process, you're gonna be
screwed,
you're gonna be failing.
I like how
Follow somebody.
Yes.
every
like-
iteration is an original thought. Every iteration is original thought
Now-
versus,
Now, by the way, at the same time, don't make it about your ego. Meaning, you don't have to have every thought. Sometimes you see somebody else and you borrow pieces,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're gonna bake something, you don't need to go and invent every ingredient, right? Every element of sequence and proportion, there's so many different ways to make something original.
Right.
It often does not come. And oftentimes, I think one of the
Yeah.
biggest misnomers, I think what happened in this world of, the whole DEI and diversity, the word diversity. Different people think differently, and yes, how you were raised and the origins matter, but diversity of thinking, not diversity of the outer factors, not the outside factors of gender, race, and whatnot, but original thinking is what you want. And diversity of original thinking, you'll see the most creative people get their ideas not even within the same industry. They will find something bizarre happening in like a kindergarten class. They combine that with some Olympic sports team, see medical doctors that then actually are helping reform prisoners, combined with maybe something happening at Google. And you're like, whoa, and so the ability to learn from different experts, different industries, different people, different types, that's the notion of creativity. That's the notion of original thinking. But in an AI world, by the way, it's completely flipped, right? When anyone can execute 90% perfection with the right prompts, the limiting factor becomes the quality of your ideas, the creative direction, the strategic insight, the unique perspective. we are more in control. We have more agency now than we ever have, but we have to know what we want. I can't tell you how many of us literally are like, someone should know what to do. Now, it's up to you to figure out what to do and then try it and iterate and try it and iterate. The most successful companies I'm seeing are shifting resources from production to ideation. Less time pushing pixels, more time exploring concepts. This part I loved, that the most successful companies, right? In the same way, the most successful teams or the most successful individuals should be shifting resources, time, energy, mind share from production to like ideation being brainstorming, the ability to solve problems with your mind faster and better. This thing goes on and continues saying, in a world where anyone can create a beautiful website, logo, or packaging, the winners are focusing on the things AI can't yet simulate. I think it's authentic relationships, innovative products, and unique perspectives. The real advantage is in knowing when to break the rules of good design in ways that resonate emotionally. The human touch is becoming less about execution and more about strategic deviation from the optimized norm. That's fancy speak for make something original.
Yeah.
Right? Stop copying people. I don't know if you know, when you go look at Netflix or any of the movies, they're like the same script, just with a woman this time, or with a child, or with like, you know, an old man versus a young man. Like it's like they're just taking formulas of success and then saying, let's make a copy of that and throw a few variables that change. And by the way, when a tool like that shows up, which is the ability to data mine, and the data can tell you what's going to succeed based on what succeeded before, you're going to see at first, it seems to be like, wow, we figured out, right, the tool of how to win, right? This technology just gives me a formula how to win. I don't even have to think. But then you're going to see it run out. And it's like kind of like coffee, right? The half-life, it's just going to start having. And you're going to wonder, why is it plummeting so fast when it works so well? And so you're looking for the next thing to come out from the machine. And you'll see whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's business ideas, whether it's project. If you operate having the machine and the data tell you what to do, you're gonna always be playing catch up.
This is why
Right.
this word authentic, I think it's authentic relationships. So I highlight that because when you think about being authentic, right, and connected to all the work that we do around emotion, emotion drives everything. Emotion drives your decision making, your relation. Emotion drives everything that we do. And we're going to touch on that, I think, next, just sharing with your field trip we had here last week. But this idea that authentic, if you're actually trying to be authentic, that's connected to being original, authentic, emotion, it's all connected. And that we're going to get to that, I think, as a kind of the core of the intellectual work or the strategic work actually starts with like what you're actually what you're really feeling, your emotion, all of that is what's driving what you end up doing.
It was very cool. We had a team of 24 sixth graders, so 12, 13-year-olds come, spend a few hours at Next Jump last week. And we were taking them through not only kind of like it's a public school, it goes to work, right? So it's a community day, but we were taking them through not only a tour, and it's fascinating. They're like actually really curious. What do you do for work and why this and that? Got a tour of the space and then took them through a workshop of actually going through using a tool from Mark Brackett. Mark Brackett wrote the book,
How to Feel.
Or
Permission to Feel.
Or Permission to Feel. He has a new book coming out in the fall. We're going to actually feature it here as well. But he created this thing called an emotion. It's a mood meter. And there's 4 different quadrants of different emotions, you know, like unpleasant to pleasant emotions to high energy, low energy, so 4 different groups. And this is the big insight that Mark Brackett had, that if you track your emotions over time, you should be spending time in each quadrant over time, not in the same day. And if you don't, you're actually suppressing reality. A lot of us are trained to suppress negative emotions, or a lot of us are trained to not put high energy, so be more calm. And what you end up doing is getting a view of yourself that you might experience, but also other people see. And don't forget, every human being is like a mirror for us. And you're getting a blueprint, or not blueprint, like an imprint of an incorrect version of you. Living life makes you experience emotions in every quadrant. And it's not about like bad emotions, right? Like should be suppressed. No, they exist. That, and people even hate using the word bad emotions. So
Yeah.
unpleasant. But like, we don't need to be children here, right? We can use real language, simple language. Unpleasant is a synonym to bad, right? And the point is like bad emotions exist and that's normal. And so we trained this group of students to first brainstorm the most unpleasant or bad emotions they've had and the stories that came with it. And they just I started whiteboarding on
Like
the
a
wall.
bad day, right?
Right?
A very
Like worst
unpleasant
day, worst day of their
Yeah.
life. What were some of the things? And so 12, 13-year-olds brainstorming. And then we took them through.
24, 12-year-olds at 12, yeah.
Was it?
The 12-year-old,
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
13, 12-year,
Yeah.
yeah, the
12,
12 years
13.
old, 24 kids.
And then we went and took them through 3 different strategies that you can work to actually change your mood, change your emotion. So one was laughter, the other one was movement, and the third was community, even just experiencing fun conversations with each other. And I loved at the end when we had takeaways from this group of 6th graders. Top takeaway was working on emotions is the hard work. And what they witnessed was an office space built to help emotions so that you can brainstorm. I mean, simply
yeah.
put,
That's cool.
working on emotions is the root key to actually strategic thinking, to original thinking, to actually flexing the number 1 human skill. And the second part I love they took away was the future isn't all about technology. Everything now is it's about technology, computers, and this and that. And they couldn't believe how much of the office was built using physical walls, using outdoor to be able to lay down in dark, quiet, loud, I mean, many different ways
Yeah.
to actually use every ingredient available to human beings so that you can actually change the emotion to what you need situationally, and then that drives all the intellectual work, strategic thinking, and so forth. So that was kind of cool just to have students, right, and the
Pick
kids
up on that.
experience it.
Yeah.
That was just very cool. This was a diagram we drew just on a whiteboard recently, that the new organizational design, right? Think of what is needed now. Strategy and decision-making is done differently. The left triangle is a typical org chart of almost every company. Strategy and decision-making was done by the top. And whether you like to admit it or not, most organizations are still running this way. Everyone below was a helper or a follower. Now you might think, oh, well, I know I make decisions and I do strategy. Not really. Like you're operating in some siloed box. You're practically part of an assembly line and you're given your little 4 corners. And yeah, you can go nuts being strategic within those 4 corners with all these guidelines and rules. That is not strategy and decision-making in today's world. 21st century, the landscape is literally full of every possibility. We all walk around with literally on our fingertips, because in our pockets, a supercomputer that can access every data point in the world in all time. Like it's insane how powerful that is. And so now, whatever we conceive of, think of, we can go and start to execute. And even as of yesterday with ChatGPT, faster than you ever have, right? And so the new org design looks more on the right. Teams of ideally 2, but it might start with 1. We found that bad teams of 2 produce far worse than a team of 1. But a strong team of 2 outdoes teams of 1 any day, hands down. And so the key is to build to these independent, every circle, that green 2 represents an autonomous decision-making unit. And every unit will be leveraging technology. But the team of 2 network together, sharing information, but each one is like the old pyramid, right? The whole org chart, but in one circle, working together. And by the way, sometimes these circles are not employees of your company. Sometimes they're freelancers, sometimes they're just collaborations, right? So we have an entire interesting topic about, I call it the slave trade, right? The employer-employee relationship is a slave trade agreement where I pay you and you do my bidding,
Yeah.
right? And it's an agreement that actually worked in the industrial age. It doesn't work anymore now. And the reason it doesn't work is that if you don't want to do something, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do, you can't force people to be creative. You can't force people to be
Yeah.
original in thought and be obsessive.
Right.
They have to choose themselves.
Yeah.
Self-driven matters a lot.
Actually, that's your
Right?
next bullet. If you go to the
Oh,
next slide,
okay.
that's what.
Oh yeah, so this was a write-up that came, I think, from Y Combinator, but all different guidance about keeping teams small and all the stuff. But to me, the most important part was this highlight in the middle. People choose what to work on. It's better they ship what they want than not ship what you want. How many leaders and managers are frustrated that people aren't producing what they want? So there's a very delicate balance of, it literally is very much like parenting. I mean, I can't tell you, if you have children, you face this every day, right? And especially as they get older, it gets even more challenging. You know, I want to help them because I care about them more than anybody, right? I want to guide them. I want them successful. But if I micromanage them, you can get to a place where they can't make decisions for their own. They have no agency, to the point where maybe you have children that can't even use a fork because you have to cut the food, put it on the fork, and then put it in their mouth. And then once you take the fork out, you have to remind them, chew. Like, it sounds like an exaggeration, but there is a lot of that. There's the flip side. You'll be like, I just let them run and do whatever they want. The younger they are, they're very inexperienced. A child, if you ever watch Home Alone, right? You know that scene where he goes to the hotel? What does he do? Room service? I mean, an ice cream sundae bar, everything is like I am chewing gummy bears combined with pouring M&Ms down my throat while I have more ice cream. Like, that's okay for one day when you're home alone, right? If that becomes your norm, you're gonna die, right? I mean, talk about cancer, talk about unhealthy, talk about the inability to develop your brain. Like, guidance matters, but that tricky push and pull and help and leave alone. And you'll see parents, I mean, just rack their brains with like, oh God, they're doing it so wrong. What do I do? Do I leave them alone? Do I help them? If I jump in, they won't trust me. All of that, right, is literally what working with people is like. And sometimes it's just a colleague. Sometimes it's a roommate. Sometimes it's a friend. I mean, I don't know how many times you might want to shake someone and just imprint your thoughts on them and say, can you just do it right? And they won't, but they have to want to do it on their own. Same thing goes for exercise. Same thing goes for nutrition. Same thing goes, especially for work on the human brain. Self-driven matters a lot. So this is the bulk of the class. We're going to break this down. So I'm going to break this slide down just really quick. So how to build products. The old way to work, you have to look at what org charts are designed to do. Everyone is designed to be a follower for the people on top. Think about a farmer's mindset. And I think about, it was Naval who always talks about learn to work like a lion, not like a cow. The idea of a cow, when I think about a visual of a cow, so forget about cows even being in farms, but like, I just think you're just waiting to be killed, you know? Like you're going and just chewing on grass, moving, pasture to pasture. And like, everything's your enemy, right? Whether it's a coyote or a wolf coming out or the farmer's coming out, you're just waiting to be slaughtered. Like, you're just like
A sitting duck kind of.
Sitting duck.
Cow. Yes.
And I think about the farmer's mindset, like it's very different. It's a peacekeeping kind of mindset. Things accumulate, like the soil matters over time. If you planted something, you kind of pay the price. And so a lot of it's very chore oriented, routine, and you're beholden to the seasons and going through. Think of that mindset versus the new way to work as a leader, not a helper. I want you to think about a hunter mindset. I want you to think of lions. The idea of a lion analogy from Naval is always around the fact of like lions don't eat every day. They end up resting, but when they go eat, it's like as a pride, they go hunt, right? And then they just eat as much as they can, and then they're like sleeping, right? Resting, maybe even playing, and then they go eat again. This idea of, we had shared before, 20% of your time should go on defense, on actually managing your anxiety, dealing with problems, fire drills. 80% of your mindset should go on offense. How to think like a warrior, how to think like a fighter. Picture hunters, right? Every day is a new day. Just because you went hunting yesterday, right? And there was like a whole bunch of, I don't know, whatever you hunt for, deer, they're not there again today. You have to go do something different. And some days you come out empty-handed, but you'll see even how you start the day as a hunter is vastly different than starting the day as a farmer. The farmer has a methodical, just routine to just get the machine to go. Hunters start the day like rallying, courage, aggression, pumping each other up. And they don't do the, oh, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm really struggling today. No, like they can get killed while hunting, right? So there's a whole different mindset to pump yourself up, get in the right mood, get in the right mindset to go and move with bursty speed. And how a lion works, how a hunter works versus how a cow and farmer. So think of building products, think of doing work in this new way. So I'm just going to take you through this slide from the top left and then to the right. So think of something linear. We're used to in the industrial age doing things with precision. What's step one? What's step two? What's step three? Step four? I've known like engineering heads actually sometimes type out my 1 to 20 steps for my younger engineers to go code. So first do this, two do this. So micromanagement of instructions. And a lot of people start searching for, give me the instructions, sir, or ma'am, whatever you use, right? Versus think about directionally linear. Directionally linear is different. And so I was telling Megan in putting this presentation together, we're struggling because a presentation is linear, but the actual reality of how we work is not linear.
Right.
It has a directionally linear sense, but it's very bursty. And bursty is a term that was used describing how children work. If you ever watch a group of children attacking a playground or attacking a playroom, right? I mean, it literally is like watching chaos, right? I mean, and then they just go and like play here and there, moving around, sharing stuff, pulling, pushing. And the study they've done, it's fascinating. The business school study with making a tower with spaghetti straws and marshmallows. And they found that kindergartners were consistently able to beat business school students.
Right.
They were consistently able to, you're trying to build the tallest tower, right? And like, they just start trying stuff. Business school people sit trying to
Yeah,
figure
they're not
out.
trying to be polite to each other. They're just like, that's not working, get out of the way, kind of, right? Gotta do like that.
But they don't even say that. They just start popping
start doing
the
it.
marshmallow, trying stuff. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
They fail and iterate. They fail and iterate. Business school students are first trying to suss out who's the senior person in the room, who can I not piss off,
Right.
who's more aggressive, right? And then the first idea, and you would kind of want to go you do that fake, like I'm listening to you response. And then you do let me try to maybe add some value. And someone says, don't say no, but let's add yes, or whatever. Like,
it's
they
not
go
but,
with this.
and yes, now you start
Like-
getting all that stuff, And now you're like, what are we talking about? We're trying to get the mission done or not? We're trying to make the spaghetti situation
And
marshmallow.
if you ever see children watch adults do this, like sometimes the kid will say, what are you guys doing? Just stack it up and let's go.
Yeah.
And the adults are like, no, we're strategizing,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's what we think is work.
Yes.
Sitting there, right, playing business bingo, right, jargon
But
bingo.
your whole point is around
Sorry.
burstiness,
Okay,
right? Your
burstiness,
whole point
sorry.
is around
I
burstiness.
digress, I
Sorry, we
digress.
easily digress. I mean, that's a really good point. It's just like,
So
this is
there's a
enough.
framework we built years ago, which I think is it's cool. We built it off of the founder of Hotmail. Those of you who don't use Hotmail now, right?
I don't think anybody here knows what Hotmail is.
That's
Maybe
not true.
10%.
That's not true.
10%.
It's an older crowd. They know.
There are some people.
Jesus.
Terry's like, I know.
Yeah.
I still can't recover my
There's some
password.
Hotmail people
What? You
on
don't?
our, like, our guest list.
You do?
Yeah,
Some
some
Hotmail?
Okay. So
Oh.
no, but the whole point of Hotmail was this. The founder of Hotmail said, if two people like love my product, I can get 300 million people to love it. This notion of, they call it white hot coal. The hottest coal, fire coal, is white hot coal. And so this notion of building something that at least two people literally love. That's not bad. I can see that work. No, not like that mediocre, like sort of like giving you that half-ass compliment. No, I am talking about, oh my God, right? Visceral thumbs up reaction. You build that, then you work on scaling. Most people spend so much time thinking of how to scale,
Yeah.
they actually never build something that's great. You got to build something great first. And that notion of building something great, the rule of thumb first and foremost, so the one who put CKMM, make sure you use it, make sure you do it. I dislike heavily the general notion of building something that, well, do you use it? Well, I don't really, I'm like, then don't build that. Build something that you yourself viscerally love. And then the second one is the notion of I'm gonna now try to share it, right? Or give this to somebody else and let's see if they viscerally love it. And oftentimes what ends up happening is because of our own blind spots, all the steps we skip, whether it's building a technology product or whatever it might be, you try to watch someone else use your product or try something and it doesn't quite work. It's too complicated. They don't understand the instructions. They're like they don't really need it. And you're iterating until you can build white hot coal that works for you and that works for somebody else. And that someone else can be one other person, but could be different other
The idea of somebody
use
else who's not
cases.
just like you though, right?
But
That
not-
idea of diverse, like, so it doesn't, but
So-
like somebody who's not just like, like years ago, we talked about something that would work for a mom and a dad, or something that would work for, a female or a man, like
Yes.
some way to have something, so it's not like, like if my twin sister loved it, I'd be like, I don't know, like maybe we both
Yes.
like the same things too much, like, that's not
But
really
totally
great,
agree.
that's not a good one.
And the biggest thing you see is, I mean, especially in the tech world, two tech bros, they're almost
Yes.
identical, high-fiving and excited the same
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
They built something that kind of only they love. And they're wondering why everybody else doesn't love it.
Mhm.
Like, if they tried to, instead of jumping to scaling, focusing on getting someone different than them, maybe in a different industry, to love a product, once you figure that out, then you scale. So on the bottom part, so 4 different phases, and this is interesting. You start by putting the majority of your time, the guidance to our engineering team. Krista and Kwong are the 2 engineers helping build our AiCoach. The guidance gave them was 80 to 90% of your time on product excellence. Value creation, meaning make it that awesome. Until we get those signals, we don't shift the percentage of time. Then you move to marketing excellence, which is focusing on usage and adoption. You don't buy customers, you don't force people, but you want to see people naturally adopt. And there's a whole process there. Before you focus on monetization, how to make money, before you can focus on, say, pitching investors, liquidity exits. And so when you group this together, it kind of looks like this. The 1-1 process, you're building product. The scale process is when you're now iterating on marketing. Then you focus on monetization. Then you focus on the last part. And we had this fascinating discussion. So over the years, there's a group called Founders Institute. There's a lot of startup incubators. So so Megan and I have mentored for founders years ago. Like at least I did for maybe 5 years or so. And you get basically a percentage of equity of every startup that you end up like kind of mentoring through these classes. And even if you aren't teaching the class, like every time you mentor, you're ranked. And based on your ranking, you get a larger percentage of the equity, right? So it's kind of a cool concept. By the way, there was like 150 chapters around the world. And they run anywhere from 2 to 3 classes of say like 20 to 30 startups. So every city, right, running that many for that many years. I mean, you're talking about thousands, tens of thousands of companies going through being generated.
Yep.
And they have this like I think it's like a 16-week curriculum. Every week, different things, and 3 different mentors come, and it's a whole process. But it's fascinating when you watch what the DNA of any organization is. Because usually whatever they're doing the most of, whatever they're putting the most emphasis on, they're actually saying, often indirectly, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Founders Institute, the number one thing they did was pitching investors. Every session started with 1-minute pitches, right? Then when the mentors came, everyone gave longer pitches that the mentors couched on. And so despite covering different topics of product, building, marketing, hiring, team, everything,
They were always practicing a
every
pitch.
single
Yeah.
time you're practicing pitching an investor like
Yeah.
to raise money. And if you listen to the marker of success, it was how many rounds of financing you did and how far you are and what they call, seed rounds and then Series A, Series B, and just moving up financing, right? So I got ranked as one of the top mentors they've had. And so you get this percentage of equity, right? And I was telling Megan, I think I got a check for maybe like $1,600 after 5 years, right? Being ranked the top mentor, training like people. And by the way, we housed Founders Institute in our office. The New York chapter ran out of our own office for several years in a row. So we got to see a lot more of it. And so here was the fascinating thing. The organization that obsessed on pitching investors above all else, and then next came your revenue model, your monetization plan, I think had the least amount I can think of successful companies built making money and successful, like whether it's IPO or exits, versus on the flip side, the single biggest and most successful incubator startup is called Y Combinator. Only one location out in San Francisco. Is built by this guy, Paul Graham. After he left, Sam Altman, who's the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI, he ran it for a little bit, and there's another guy running it now. They have the exact opposite. The obsession is on A and B. Obsession on building an excellent product, on getting usage, adoption. And when they obsessed in A and B, the biggest of companies have come out of that at a higher amount than any other startup incubator, even though there's so many around the world. Nothing has produced more high revenue making, so monetization, C, and high like investment raises than the companies coming out of Y Combinator.
So so you're basically saying you build something amazing and the money will come.
It's not as simple as that.
Okay.
Because that's too like binary.
Right.
It's just that when you think of directionally, would you rather have 80-20 or say even 95%, 5%? Lean towards A and B, right? Or is it 80-20 or is it 95-5 on C and D? And the organizations that did the majority of their focus on A and B did far better on the latter things of making money and pitching investors, raising funds than the ones who did it the other way. That notion when you said that very first thing on the tweet where, what was a comment about, instead of trying to get like traffic and whatnot and content, focus on making something great.
Right.
The internet and what it did for us was it got us to reverse engineer what we thought success was. More views, right? More views, right? More viral meant success. And so it ended up creating a world of memes and cat jokes.
A lot of mediocre
basically
stuff.
a whole bunch of stupidity, right? And just because the early movers got some traffic, right? And yes, maybe make some money, and they found a way to eventually sometimes parlay some of their things into a book or into a business, right? Everyone copying afterwards, not working. And this notion of learning to reboot to the foundational basics. A and B is what you want to obsess on, and C and D will follow. You still have to work on those, but just in the right sequence. We're trying to do it the wrong way. And what people are doing instead is D, to me, represents often optics. So let me give you an example. So if you haven't tried AiCoach at nextjump.com, it's pretty simple. You just have to email it. You email it, whatever thought, question, challenge, anything you want advice on, a decision you're struggling with, and you will be shocked. It's on the screen too, but you'll be shocked how, so in less than 5 minutes, usually it takes a minute to two, it will spit back at you like advice. And it's pretty good. It's pretty thorough. So try it if you can. So I'll tell you how we ended up building it. But James Clear, he wrote the book Atomic Habits. And he wrote, when dreaming, imagine success. When preparing, imagine failure. When acting, imagine success. This is in the wrong order. So leadership in practice is different than leadership in theory. In theory, you can throw a whole bunch of stuff and they all hold true. But in practice, the priority, the sequence matters a lot. If you do things in the wrong order, it just won't work. So in this example, I'll touch on this kind of top part of wanting, which we talked about BX. Oftentimes when I think of dreaming, you have to think of it as my VX, my Eden, my wanting. And the simple question is, does it still make sense? Do you ever work on something, you're like, I'm not sure if it's worthwhile to continue? You have to say, does it still make sense? Does the big thesis, the mega trend, the theory still make sense? And if it does, you keep pushing. And so finding the right VXs where you can dream, imagine success at a bigger level. Does that make sense? Then what happens, the debugging is the opposite side of iteration, which is why I put red versus green. And there's a group that we met years ago that built an entire program for children, and they use the word debugging. Debugging is a great way where you debug something when there's a problem. Nobody really says, I'm gonna debug, my success.
Well, it comes
I mean-
from software development, right? The term debugging or.
Yeah,
in
but
general?
I think
It's
of
like just
debugging
as
as like a problem.
As an error in the code,
An
right?
error.
Yeah.
Something is wrong,
Mhm.
right? We rarely say, wow, that was so successful, I want to debug my success, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I think of iteration kind of more tied to success. We tend to want to push forward, right? Once again, the hunter-fighter mindset, when something's working, when something isn't, we have to debug.
Yeah.
But they're kind of the same thing. This notion of, and I put V1, V2, that's version 1, version 2, creative problem-solving skills. Problem-solving skills is important. So when I think of the order to do this, first you have to kind of have like a vision, something you want, right? And then you won't pull the trigger unless you think it's going to work. And this is something that's shown up a lot in research. If you can't imagine success, you're not going to give it a legitimate shot.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people say it's not going to work, it's not going to work, and then you do something, it's like, see, it didn't work? I'm like, it didn't work because you already decided it's not going to work. You don't even know all the little elements that you didn't give it a full, fair shot.
Yeah.
You have to imagine success to shoot. But then as soon as you hit send, as soon as you ship the code, as soon as you do a presentation, you're going to be like, shoot, right? What could you have done better? And this is where now you're imagining failure. They usually say in emails, the single best editor is the send button. As soon as you hit send, you see everything that's wrong. But until you hit send, you won't see it.
Mhm. It's crazy, right? It's like a little mental game. It's like,
Yes.
why does it work that way?
So-
You actually have to do it.
You gotta
And
do it.
God, I should have said, right?
And then after 3 is when you have to go to 4. I can't tell you how many people stop at 3, right? Well, it's no good. So
Mm-hmm.
then you go into maybe I'm no good. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? You have to make it so about your identity and whatnot. Get out of your head. Instead, figure out what was wrong and think about now imagining success with the knowledge of having done one iteration,
Yeah.
right? That notion of iteration is like, I think about kids playing video games. Once you play the level once, if you go in the second time, you just have
Yeah.
ideas of how to not get killed this time, right?
Mhm.
That notion of with that same enthusiasm, right? Imagining success, you go in, right? Like you tell kids to stop playing video games, they keep dying, right? They keep trying.
Mhm.
That same mindset of like wanting to take another shot because, and the reason they try is not because they're like, we're gonna die. The ones who say it never works, you're never gonna get past this level, you'll see stop playing. You have to instead, like, be like the kid who's like, no, please, mom, dad, just give me one more chance. I just need one more try. It's because they imagine success, right? Now, the kids who don't debug, you'll see they keep trying, but they never,
Try the
ever
same thing
get
over
past
and
it.
over again.
Yes, so debugging matters, right? Okay, so I'm gonna cover an example with AiCoach, how we built it. And in fact, so many things are happening parallel, so I'm just gonna give you little pieces, right? Of sort of what happened. This is interesting. I always think in hindsight, getting down to the origins of something is fascinating. So this was actually not that long ago, December 14th, right? Megan and I, it happened to be a warm day in New York. I remember vividly where we were, up on our terrace and the sun was out. So we were like December 14th, out, like sitting in the sun, reading some email chain. And so Megan writes Laura saying, this is freaking awesome. I read the first few pieces of advice and had, wow, that's putting into words what you're describing with suggestions, including the idea of a pilot for you to try something on product. This was the AiCoach in the early rudimentary version, recommending, based on something Laura did, like what to do. Then I saw the below. It recommends 3 lip videos. That's so cool. CK, that's me, just said, wow, Imagine if it gave clips of those videos, even more targeted, shorter, bite-sized ones. The initial AI coach just gave you the whole video, which sometimes is like an hour and a half video, right? So you get a piece of advice, you have to watch a whole video to figure out what in the hour and a half or 2 hour video is relevant to whatever you wrote. Which, by the way, is what happens in a lot of books, right? The whole book, you have to read the book, you're like, wow. Now, what are you gonna do with it? And most people can't translate it, adopt it into their life. What AI has done is it can take an entire book and then you write something and it can figure out based on what you wrote, how it translates to what specific section in the book and give you advice with that level of relevance. That's kind of what this technology did. So anyways, Krista and Kwong, the engineers, so like Megan writes, I would encourage you to share this with Krista and Kwong, or let's see what they do with it. The note I wrote, it looks like a few minutes after Megan, right, was sharing this OMM, right? Basically,
Yeah, it was-
read my own writing.
Yeah, just because I think I don't think there's anything private nature. So you said, Krista, Kwan, Kevin, I assume this is work you guys did. It says, is it set right now for anyone who writes it on my mind? If not, why don't we make that happen ASAP, right? Send out on my minds because we don't see any analysis on AI. Then I've seen X write on my mind, but haven't seen the AI analysis. Maybe it's only on a few accounts. Can we go, basically Charlie's saying, can we go faster? Can we push harder? Can we turn this feature on for everyone? Every on my mind, anyone inside Next Jump or outside who writes for this to happen. Same on our feedback app, for a feedback app on AI. Whose feedback does it analyze? Anyone or just a few people? Basically change it, push much faster, right?
And so some of you might think this is like, oh, they're trying to scale. It's not scaling. The highlight I wrote, beta mode.
Yeah.
We had the team literally change the product to say beta. Beta is a term that software companies use to say, hey, I think we have something valuable, but it's not quite ready.
Yeah.
So we want to almost push and break it, find out what's wrong with it. And so what I wrote here is translation. What I'm saying is we need as many users hitting the system to see what comes out, trends, reports, insights, this idea of I want to know what's wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
So this is, you see the James Clear, like we already shot stuff. Sometimes it's an accidental thing and we want to find out what's wrong with it,
Yeah.
right? How do we make it better? By putting it through contact sports and real users. And this was the part that was interesting. The initial AI coaching was built. And when I saw it, my reaction to Megan is I don't like it. I don't like it because it's first based on years of old industrial age backwards looking data. Most of the coaching was that typical consultative coaching where it kind of makes you, like you're asking for help and it makes you walk away with 6 life pondering questions.
Yes.
And you're like, God, my brain hurts. Where
Yeah.
like, have you thought about where you want to
Like,
go 5 years from now? Have you thought about like, are you holding back your goals?
Yeah.
Are you like setting the wrong
Really
goals?
deep.
Are you like, not asking for help in the right places? And it's like one of those, what the hell are you talking about? Right? Like, I wanted some help and something I really need help with. And you're asking me these existential questions, these life questions, making me go do homework.
Hey, Papa's like, I'm
search
just trying to
through-
create a menu for my
Yeah.
restaurant. You're making me question my reason for being on this planet. And am I a good dad?
It's like hiring a really bad consultant who clearly watched a few YouTube videos
Yeah.
and figured out a list of 20 questions to fire at you so you can ponder your own challenge and come up with your own solution. And I can say, I helped you do that. Right? That world is gonna die, right? Those jobs are gonna disappear so rapidly, and I believe they already should. But that's literally what the technology was doing. So here was when we started pushing and started doing different things. So this was a test I just did this week. And it was fascinating. I was telling Megan, like, when you meet with a coach, when you meet with, whether it's a therapist, a coach, the quality of their guidance is usually directly tied to the quality of information you share.
Yes.
When you don't share a lot of information, they can't really help you very well. So like literally with our AI coach, which went through hundreds of micro iterations just since December, so it's been only 3 months. I was trying to tell Megan, like, I'm sure it's not gonna do well
It's
if I
like-
don't give it a lot of information. So I said, watch this, right?
Watch this, right?
So I just typed in, I'm struggling with sales. Help me with sales. And I was like, it's gonna do nothing. This is what it sent back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, so I'll read it. The insight Assume every sale starts as a no. This removes the fear of messing it up since you're already at no. Challenge, apply the 3x fighting rule. Plan for 3 attempts minimum for each prospect rather than sending 1 email and waiting. Action, create your list of difficult things. Identify which accounts you're avoiding and tackle them first when your courage is highest. Additional point, use time pressure as motivation by assuming it's a no after 15 to 20 minutes and planning your next move. This is iteration. A quick no is better than a perpetual maybe. It lets you learn and adapt faster. Most relevant video, Leadership in Practice 227, the antidote to depression equals wanting, practical application of 3x fighting. When you click on that link, it takes you to like literally the 2-minute clip where it says, don't overthink tough talks. It probably means tasks, right? Tough tasks.
Oh, yes.
Be curious and persistent. Plan for multiple attempts. Someone emailed Jeff Bezos 20 times before getting a response. This notion of you have to want something and it's teaching you how to iterate and kind of getting ready for hard mode, as opposed to the biggest mistake in sales is people go in thinking I should get a yes. No, you're going in thinking it's going to be a no, and it's like a video game. I'm going to solve it. And it was fascinating. I was like, that's not what I expected it to do. I thought it said, I need more information. I can't really help you that much, except with generic advice. So then I was like, all right, how about I try something totally different, right? I was like, my 12-year-old is struggling in school. Help me with him, right? I was like, what could it possibly do in that one, right? Is what I wrote. Quick take. Insight. Your 12-year-old needs emotional awareness development, not quick fixes or generic comfort statements that fail to create lasting change. Challenge. Focus on better me, meaning as an adult, focus first on myself as an adult by developing your own emotional management skills before trying to help them, as lecturing without doing the work yourself won't be effective. Action. Create space for them to identify and articulate their feelings about school. Celebrate these insights as valuable self-awareness during their crucial learning period. Additional point, the developmental stage is their get out of jail free learning period. As in, the goal isn't improving grades, but building a foundation of emotional intelligence and decision-making skills for life's future challenges. Leadership in Practice 211, self-driven mind, part 2, right? The problem with quick fixes. Parents offer outdated advice like generic affirmations or quick fixes that temporarily help, but miss that success requires systematic growth, not one-time solutions.
Seriously, great advice for a parent.
Great
It may or may not be about my 12-year-old son, right? I was like, what? I said it to my husband. I'm like, are you seeing this, right? Like, this conversation about you got to take care of yourself first, right? You got to get yourself right so that you can help them. And if you think, oh my God, grades in 6th grade matter more than that, just this idea of this developmental stage is their get out of jail free learning period.
So here's
We're
what
12
happened.
right now,
No.
right? This is not going to be, this is not going to determine your future, what college you go to, what job you're going to have. I mean, it's like nothing, but
We did not expect this.
No.
I mean, like I literally put it in as an example to show Megan, see, when you ask for help, but you don't offer a lot of information, it can't help you. And when it came out, I was like, oh my God, this is really good. So this question of how did this come to be? What got the product to this state? Now, what AiCoach is doing is taking 5 years of leadership in practice content. Think about a weekly long form podcast. It's taking all that knowledge. Said another way, if you go to business school and there's a lecture by a professor, right, every week, but think about not every year where they repeat the same lectures, right, year over year with very little change. Every single weekly lecture with no holidays, no summer breaks and whatnot, every single week, for 5 years was original content that was put in. The sum total of all that content analyzed, right? 5 years of weekly leadership and practice lessons. AiCoach is taking all that knowledge based on whatever you are looking for help, challenge, difficulty, even just pondering. It's then finding the most relevant portion and boom, spitting at you the short take is the short version, and then there's a longer take, which gives you at least 2 videos and like kind of more blurberage. The 5 years, but where is the 5 years of content coming from? 20 years in our pro bono foundation, how we built our leadership knowledge was actually through our pro bono efforts of helping tens of thousands of leaders in organizations at a global level. And it wasn't something that like was helping them selling our book. No, it was in practice, in the details, things that will never even be published for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. This guy, Bill Campbell, who I met before, he passed away. He's known as the $1 trillion coach. He coached,
All the top business
all the
leaders,
top people
right?
from Steve Jobs to and Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, all the top people. He was a football coach from Columbia. And they would always talk about the stuff that he would coach you on was literally 30 years ahead of what would ever get published. Things that get published, now it's maybe happening faster. So maybe it's getting published every 10 years or 5 years. It takes enough recurring patterns with enough data, with enough people criticizing it before they'll publish it. All the most cutting edge stuff, especially when the world is changing so fast, shows up behind closed doors in real work, what people are struggling with. Through our pro bono efforts of 20 years, we're talking about every industry you can imagine, from athletes and doctors and nonprofits and military. I mean, across the globe, we went through and accelerated how many people were helping in different types of topics. Authors, researchers, TED Talk speakers coming to us, even walking us through the holes in their presentation and their book, and where they're looking for examples and what do I do to write the next book. All those discussions, 20 years of that knowledge and growing is what's being shoved into leadership and practice.
Right.
So leadership and practice is the accumulated knowledge of all of that experience in practice from different industries happening weekly. Then AiCoach is taking that accumulated knowledge over 5 years and then giving it to you at your fingertips. That's pretty powerful. And so
That's why when you ask it something as generic as that, it has that much
and
detail.
the initial AiCoach, to be honest, I give it an F. It sucked. It just wasn't very good because it was built off generic internet data. And the majority of internet data is analyzing a leadership model that is built on a factory industrial age model where a few people made the decisions and the goal was to get everyone else to follow. So most of the advice is connected of how to lecture and get everyone to follow. Sorry.
It's not plugged in, I got it.
Oh, okay.
Should be now.
It's a bomb
Your
shelter.
computer's
Ah.
about to die. Is it on?
I'm assuming it is. Okay, so this is at your fingertips. I'm just giving you little pieces. So in building the product, one of the simple strategies we shared in an earlier leadership class is think of doing things in 2 buckets, the now bucket versus later. A lot of times people plan, well, that should go in version 5, that should go in version 7. It's a lot easier to have a giant bucket of later versus stuff you're focusing on now. It's a great way to segment how to prioritize. So we've, Coach Krista and Kwong through this, and Krista and Kwong don't know, but the number of times Megan and I literally debate and discuss thinking of Krista and Kwong as our children. If we meet with them and guide them through this, they'll stop having agency and they'll start just following and go back to the old followership helper model. So how do we feed into what they're doing, but then give them enough guidance so they don't make, glaring errors they don't have experience in? I mean, literally, it's a constant process of there's no clear path of exactly how to coach and manage them best, but there are also no clear path of how to best help them, but there's all kinds of burstiness. But I'm giving you just 2 of the other things they're working on, which is cool, the later version. So one of the more recent things they released, it's pretty cool, it's called memory. So as you write to AiCoach, it remembers you. And so it analyzes your past requests and then pulls down to the detail on March 12th. And then on February 8th, you had said similar things and puts in quotes your exact words to show you your own patterns. in how you're looking for help in similar themes and similar things. Very cool.
It's
By
very cool.
individual.
People tend to change more
Right.
often and when they realize it's a pattern of something versus just a one-off, right? So what a powerful way to get you to motivate you to want to change something.
And so two other things, I'll start with the bottom one, team pattern. The next version we told them, put in later bucket is imagine for a leader, a manager, being able to understand what is the common challenge, right? That my entire business unit is facing. You know, what are they succeeding on? Like to be able to analyze the entire pattern, right? Anonymizing the individual, but the pattern of the whole business unit, maybe New York City versus San Francisco versus London versus Boston by gender, by maybe seniority, my senior people, my junior people, my newest hires, to be able to run different cuts and being able to show, I mean, talk about, this is to me the HR tool of the future, right? You want to know, like instead of running a survey and, you know, and people say, so should you get paid more? Everyone says yes. A lot of surveys, like the type of question you ask is already changing what you put versus the best way to get the sense of what's on someone's mind. It's the stuff they're asking for help on, advice they're seeking. And so the patterns of that, so that's a whole product they're building, team patterns. And then the other part that's interesting is people over the years have watched Megan and I coach and help someone we've never met in industries that we don't know at all. And they always ask the way you probe, as in your follow-on questions, like how are you like doing that? There's a term called active listening. An active listener doesn't just listen. They're asking follow-on questions. They're so engaged. When you watch the dialogue, you won't even know who's speaking because it's such a rapid fire back and forth and information being exchanged.
Yeah.
And it leads to then amazing coaching. And so there's a whole set of training data. We've run coaching sessions, even including a LIP. We call them situational workshops, or at the end of LIP class Q&A, to use that training data to train the next product within AiCoach, where instead of saying, if you want to continue the conversation, just feel free to ask me more questions. It actually asks good probing questions situationally to be able to coach you even better.
Right.
So kind of very similar to the sum total of the 20 years to the 5 years to then helping you, building a whole probing tool. Probing sounds awful, but you know, follow-up questions. Right? So anyways, more stuff coming here. I'm gonna move really quick to then, as this starts happening, we're moving to marketing. We're still doing a lot of work on the product, but the marketing side, where we're looking to scale this thing. So the other product that we own as a company, while you're on LIP, is called Perks at Work. Perks at Work is the largest platform that's in pretty much every Fortune 1000 company. We are integrated into the corporate intranets of around 30,000 companies, almost every Fortune 1000. So from Google to Goldman, all clients. So it's one of the largest databases of employees at work. It's our product, it's our real estate. We don't have to buy Facebook ads and Google ads. No, we just put it on Perks at Work. So as we're going through, this is some of the nuances of what we went through even this week. Just the branding of the name. AiCoach, kind of like, is it capitals? Is it small letters? Is it, you know, if you put A, capital I, capital C, it looks, so the very top one, capital A, like
Just
this
so you
level
can
of
see it, yeah.
detail.
We know that obviously email is like not case sensitive. You can put any, but for people to remember, right? Like that ability to
Branding.
remember, yeah.
Branding, high
Recall.
recall.
High recall.
You know, Amazon.com was first called Amazon.com, not Amazon.
Right.
Like there was BestBuy.com, there, like the names, if you go back in time, the beginning, for high recall, eventually it just became Amazon. Eventually it might just be AiCoach and everyone knows. So even elements like this in detail, this was the website the team had initially built, right? You punch your email in and then you pick one of the help my prompt and it has a whole bunch of blah, 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 blah in the message. And we said, okay, let's do this better. So how do we start analyzing the best? When you go to Twitter, it says what's happening. It doesn't have like a whole bunch of blah, 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 blah. It just says what's happening. Twitter, when it started, did not have what's happening. And you can see the nuance, it's driven towards news, real-time news, which is why it says what's happening. If you look at the prompt on ChatGPT, what can I help with? Ask anything. This notion of how do we analyze, and so the team is analyzing, like, okay, let's look at, everything from Facebook, ChatGPT, Claude, Twitter, like others to get a sense. And then, by the way, the classic, let's try a whole bunch of tests is usually the old way of A/B testing. I'm a huge proponent of throw out A/B testing, focus instead of firing your best number one shot. Go with the best, and if it works, great. But if it doesn't work, then you have to go and look for why it failed, debugging before you fire your second shot.
You have to imagine success, like you said, with James Clear earlier. You have to imagine success. You can't imagine success with like 6 different A/B tests. You're kind of, you're hedging by nature. It doesn't feel like you're
If
imagining
you come
success.
up with your 2 best ideas,
Yeah.
it's gonna be diluted.
Yeah.
But now here's what's interesting about A/B testing. Sometimes my best idea is different than Megan's best
Yeah,
idea.
right.
And that's a great test to see who's more right. And then we tend to compete. So we have a little scoreboard on paper of who's been right more times than the other
Us
person.
compete.
Yeah. But once again, you can have fun with it, right? It's called playfulness.
Yes.
Um,
Until
So
it's not.
just to give you a sense of like what we started going back and forth on, with them, I'm not gonna read all this. It's like kind of going into like figuring out even the nuance of what to prompt, right? So this notion of like getting into the details of this. This is Perks at Work. It's our real estate. So what's nice is everyone is logged in. We don't even need you to put your email address. You just need a box. And if you say, help me or like, give me advice, boom, you're engaged with AiCoach. The goal is to get this to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, then move up to like millions of users.
This is just the learning page we're gonna update,
Yeah.
sorry. It
But-
doesn't
but-
have the actual AI piece in
Yes.
there, but.
And then this question people ask, well, how are you gonna monetize it and all this stuff? So one of the beauties we have as a company is first, we don't need to monetize it, which means we can make it awesome. We can get value creation and usage before having to monetize, but someone kept pressing me on this. So I said, look, I'll tell you what ChatGPT did. This is my quick diagram. They made it free and 100 million users use it and moved to 200 million to now 400 million and so forth. And then they built at some point a $20 a month premium version, right? And that like led to a whole bunch of revenue. Then they built another premium version on top of that, which is $200 a month, right? That was for hardcore developers and whatnot. Now they just built a 20,000 a month version. So you're looking
Yeah,
at,
20,000 a month.
well, if you're a bigger enterprise, there's certain things you need to do. But this portion being, once you get massive adoption of something that's valuable, you can then focus on figuring out how to monetize and then monetize more and monetize even more. And so the process of saying, let's get it right. Let's make it really good before we focus on this. But people say, well, if you can't explain to me how you're going to make money, right, you must not have a plan. That's not how it works. You can directionally have a plan. And so when someone says, how do you plan to monetize AiCoach? The real answer is, I have no freaking clue.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, there's many models and I know how to get a ton of usage and I don't have to spend hundreds of millions in marketing dollars because we have Perks at Work, right? We have our own distribution channel. This is interesting. I've shown this in previous lib classes. We're almost at the end here, about how the mission is now generally difficult, danger, conflict ridden. And the human skill at the core is the emotion, which leads to good decision-making before you can add on other stuff. So I drew the exact same diagram looking at it this way. On the right, instead of mission, think about results. Results are generally talked about in 2 types of metrics. They call them lagging metrics versus leading metrics. The lagging metrics for most businesses is it's revenue and profits. Can you make money profitably? And then the trend of it, can you get it to grow, right? I mean, that's the most important lagging metrics, right? Revenue, profitably, and can you get it to grow ideally in a larger percentage over time? And can you even get the margin of profits bigger? That's lagging metrics. But leading metrics can be things like website traffic, click-through rates, conversion rates. It can be retention. A lot of times very connected to either customers or potential customers. But with the advent of technology, the internet, and all the metrics we get, most people generally now assume if you have leading metric success, it's almost a given that you'll be able to monetize. So results are now kind of grouped very the modern day,
Yeah.
leading and lagging both suggest, if you have
So
an app
true.
or a website with a ton of traffic,
It's
everyone's like, you're gonna figure out a way to make
Yeah.
money, right? There's so many different monetization engines and whatnot.
Right.
So that's the outcome. So the process is, what do you do when you don't have that yet? And you go into the human skill, and in the middle is the emotional work. That's your mindset, your mood, which affects your intellectual work. We obsess because we're still baked in industrial age thinking. Strategy, thinking, idea generation, a process of how to generate ideas is what we think is what's going to work. If I just have the 1 to 5 step state process of good strategy, I'll do good intellectual work. Don't understand the hard work that 6th graders picked up when they came to visit us is the emotional work. Now, when you think of this notion of debugging, the hardest emotional work is courage. Like I said in the beginning about farmers and cows, to move to a mindset of hunters and lions, to be able to generate courage, you have to process real challenges and difficulty, but from the beginning of the day, or whenever you see failure, can you process it and then generate courage? That debugging, situationally, to be able to generate that courage is the hard emotional work that lets you go in to ambiguous, difficult situations. And what's interesting that we built, so the advanced version of the AiCoach is a product we built.
I was gonna say, the only reason you would need to debug is because you actually took a shot at something. You actually have to do the rep to then debug. There's nothing to debug.
Well, I would say generally, when you take a shot at something, it didn't work.
Yeah,
If you look at the root of it, you didn't believe
right.
it was gonna work.
So then you have.
That lacks
Exactly.
courage, which is why most
Right.
people shoot a timid or meek
Mhm.
shot. And I'm like, why don't you give it a real shot? They're like, well, the hesitation, every which way I already processed in my mind how it's not gonna work, why it's gonna fail. When someone criticizes, what my response is gonna be, the victim statement, the helpless statement, all that stuff
Mhm.
is all at the root. The top character trait, the top emotion that you're unable to generate is courage.
Okay, we'll come back to it, because Richie
Okay.
and Kathy, I can't read all of it in the chat. We'll come back to it, because I think you're hitting a nerve on
So,
this.
so here's
Okay.
what's fascinating. We built this product, and I'll show you a slide after, called On My Mind. It's an app that now is moving rapidly so everyone can use it with adoption. It's the advanced version of AiCoach. On My Mind was built where you put in 3 emotions that you feel. And the reason it's 3 is that at any given point, human beings never experience 1 emotion at a time. It's like literally a car crash, an accident in my mind of multiple emotions. Usually we have way more than 3. But at some point, 3 is good. And the reason why it's 3, an odd number, not an even number, is that it's never 50-50. And what you will find is your decisions usually follow your majority emotion set. Meaning, when 2 out of 3 emotions feel bad, you're gonna take a timid shot. But if 2 out of 3 emotions or 3 out of 3 are good, you're gonna have more courage. You're gonna take a different shot. So, but anyways, this notion of translating human emotions. You put the 3 emotions and you describe why you're feeling that. And you might have stories and baggage and everything, but at any given point, you rep actually becoming more emotionally aware. To then figure out how to go to alter your mood so that you can go hunt. And what On My Mind was doing was helping you just journal what you're feeling. 3 different emotions, the reasons why. The On My Mind has been now paired with AiCoach. So what it's doing is it's doing the emotional work with you. I was gonna say for you, but it's doing it
Yeah.
with you. Because you still have to self-driven choose to go do something.
Yes.
But what it's doing is it's debugging, as in helping you get emotional awareness. And it's fascinating because it's not a human doing it. When a parent does it, a manager does it, or even a roommate, friend, maybe the worst is a sibling. Usually when someone tells you, you know why I think you're feeling so down, or why you feel so, uncertain, like it's hard to hear someone give you that kind of feedback, which is often why we like to go to strangers, right? We hire, and people love, children love feedback from not their parents, right? And not their own sibling. And that's because the argument would be they're more objective,
Yeah.
right? Everyone's more objective, right? Like the stranger has no vested interest in trying to hurt you. right? Or tell you that I'm smarter than you, so we listen to their advice more objectively. But here's the drawback. The stranger does not know you as well. The nuances that matter in human life and details, and also they're not there in a continuum. Because meaning like you could see a therapist once a week, or you can see a coach for like once a week, but like the details that they will not see besides the 1 hour, right? Or the 2 hours. The person closer to you will see it. Will see every little nuance of even stuff you're not articulating. Why a parent, why a sibling, why a colleague often actually has better advice, but you can't listen to it. This AI coach is doing something fascinating. It's giving you the same feeling of objectivity because it's got no axe to grind with you, right? It's literally just translating back at you what you wrote, but then it's got memory now. So it's remembering the nuances of like what you keep asking advice for, and it's combining arguably one of the best training data sets of in-practice leadership that's happening. And what Megan and I are doing in every LIP class, every leadership and practice class, is we are keeping our pulse on what is the biggest common challenge. So we're retraining it every week with what we see
To go
that
after
people need.
solving for that.
So this thing is moving very fast, but what this On My Mind app, come back to it, is it debugs your emotion and translate it into intellectual work. It gives you how to train your emotion, the right kind of reps, and it gives you how to translate it into strategy, like how it can help your work. It's kind of cool how it does it all at once. The thing I put at the very bottom, right? The wanting, right? The debugging, the iteration, it gives you all of that in one punch in less than a minute to 2 minutes. Kind of cool. And that thing I mentioned in the beginning, one human plus AI, that's better than nothing. But the reason why even the On My Mind right now is built, where you send it to another human and the AI will also be paired with it, 2 humans plus AI is the way to go for now. 50 years from now might be different. Maybe
As you're
even
saying,
20 years
as
from
it
now will be different
advances,
because the
yeah.
data will change. Right now, AI is still majority analyzing the wrong set of data. Leadership is built with that pyramid structure I showed you. It's analyzing that versus like there's very little AI, data to analyze the circles, the decision-making units of 2. I believe the closest data set is actually what we're doing in LIP, which is kind of why this is cool. Last slide I have is this. I wanted to give you a sense of where the On My Mind app came from. This is the origins. This is my daughter's class when she was 3 years old. And kindergarten classes or nursery classes have this, which is called an emotion stick. See Olivia, that's my daughter on the right with a stick. And the teachers found that if I know what you're feeling before we start the day, it was a lot more effective in knowing basically what kind of trouble is going to happen in the class.
Yes.
Right? And so they have these, different angry, excited, different emotions. But what I found very quickly was one emotion was not accurate. And the problem of seeing everyone's emotions, they were all glomming to whoever, they quickly figured out what everyone else is voting on and they voted after that. And they also quickly figured out how to avoid the bad ones or else the teacher singles you out, right? So the idea itself was solid, but it wasn't executed in the best way. When it's
Right.
3-year-olds.
Yeah.
So when I saw this, and of course, like, me in my own curious way, before the classroom opened, I was like chatting with all the kids, right? 3-year-olds, like, what are you feeling today, right? What are you gonna pick, right? And like kids can be very honest, but also very angry. They'd be like, I'm so pissed that, like something happened. It's like silly stuff, like, like their sibling did something or the parent like wouldn't let them play for 2 more minutes on the iPad or something. Or they were angry. Then they would go into the class and they would put it on happy. And like, I think this kid's name was Charlie or something. I was like, Charlie, like you picked the wrong one. I literally went to kids and said, I think you picked the wrong emotion. And they would look at me and literally do
Like,
that kind of
yeah.
like
Don't
finger
say
across your
anything.
neck of like stop, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Because they
no.
know it doesn't, because they don't want to be the kid that puts it in worry, because now you're the problem kid. Like, they quickly pick up social cues. Like, I'm not supposed to
But
be
I was shocked
worried
that
or
at
angry.
3 years old, children had picked up,
Yeah,
right? How you get in trouble for
Yeah.
picking the wrong emotion.
How to suppress your emotions.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I was like, I literally was like, no, you picked the wrong one. The right one you want is here. And they literally
yeah.
would shove me out. These 3-year-olds be like, you're gonna get me in trouble.
Well, because you're right, because you think
So-
about it, a teacher's gonna come up to the kids who put it worried, why are you, let's go to the triage, the assistant teacher now come over to you. You're not gonna do that,
Right.
like,
But I'm saying, but this is
Right.
literally how the On My Mind app got created for that. Realizing there's more than one, 3 was the thing, but we found over time, decision-making followed our emotions. So then you have to understand your emotions.
yeah.
Right? And unlike the 3-year-olds who were all lying, to be honest, in the class for the most part, kind of the notion of when you put in what you're feeling, the AI coach is now able to give you guidance in 1 to 2 minutes, right? It's pretty cool. So anyways, all the stuff is coming.
We can do some Q
Questions?
and A for a second, but can I just make a comment, actually, what you said, while you guys think of your questions, and I know Kathy and Richie, I wanted to get back to what you guys said in the chat, have Charlie look at it too, but this idea of the current, you said, so let me just read what I wrote. I wrote, you didn't believe equals you lacked courage. So when you try something and do something, why you have to go back to the emotion is because you didn't believe in what you were doing, which means you lack the courage, which means you lack courage. So it's debugging
Mm.
why you didn't believe, right? Which is then therefore why you didn't have courage. That's the hard work of debugging, right?
Can I explain
That's-
that?
Yeah.
You know what's
explain that.
fascinating is this. So when the world was slower moving,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I don't know how many of you guys remember this part, but when internet literally didn't exist, right? Like if you wanted to reach someone, you called their house and you had to leave a message on this answering machine. And they may not get it till end of the day. So you won't hear, when information traveled at that speed, you had a lot more time to hold on to your own point of view.
Okay.
Because you'd have no idea what other people think. Versus now,
Mm.
not only can people react to you much faster, right? You're also being shoved in your face, right? What everyone else is reacting to everyone else so fast that it's very difficult to hold on to your own thought.
True.
Which, by the way, is
Totally.
a
Very
synonym
good
to
point.
belief, right? When you look at a situation that's uncertain, Right?
Right.
saying, I kind of want to try this, that
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage because it's filled with uncertainty. It's almost
Yeah,
like saying,
yeah, yeah.
here, I'm going to give you a blank piece of paper, draw something. Everyone's like, draw what?
Yeah,
Something.
yeah.
And they'll, well, what's the exercise? What do you analyze? And just draw whatever you want, right? Doodle. And then you'll see how difficult it is to get going.
Yeah.
Imagine doing something similar in writing, right? Write something interesting. What do you mean by interesting? Is this tied to your promotion? And so you instantly go through and you process, not your own thoughts. To actually
Yeah.
shove out the programmed guidance we have in our head, it takes courage.
Mhm.
It sounds kind of insane that it would take courage for you to be original. It
Right.
would take courage for you to listen to your own thoughts. It would take courage to then actually put out your own thoughts. It would take courage to allow judgment to come, right?
Mhm.
To then sit back and say, I want to debug and understand where my thought process was
Yeah.
either right or wrong. I might dig my heels in, but then explain, here's why I think this is right. And then the courage to go and get more feedback against that.
Mhm.
Courage comes up, and this is one of the traits we saw in even 10 years ago, right? Just 10 years ago, the top trait we found to succeed was confidence. And the second trait was humility. But confidence almost is an after effect, a latent effect of applying successful courage. If you successfully apply courage, you build confidence. Right.
So here's this, is the old confidence and humility, now we're saying courage and patience.
I would say courage and curiosity. Right? Remember the class we mapped out?
Yeah.
And the reason why curiosity is this, I feel patience matters,
Yeah.
but things are moving so fast and the speed of iteration is so fast.
Okay.
I think right now people have an overabundance of patience.
Okay.
So
So-
patience is no longer a trait
Yeah,
that's
only-
doing much
yeah.
good except making you sit still, frozen, do nothing.
Procrastination.
Right? So,
Yeah.
but curiosity is a sibling of patience. True
Is it?
curiosity.
It's a simple.
True curiosity,
Okay.
because
okay,
you're interested,
okay.
right? But remember, when you have fear, which is lack of courage usually,
Yeah.
You have deprivation curiosity,
That's
which is
good.
when you don't have patience to search and learn. You take the easiest thing that makes you feel good,
Mhm.
right? So this is where it's very complex and nuanced. But courage is what, right now, there's an overabundance or like a gap of not enough courage. And odd as it is, it's not like, oh, well, I have courage to go on the internet anonymously and just post all kinds of stuff. No,
Yeah.
and just fight at people. I mean, we're saying like, you know, even when you look at Twitter, there's a lot of aggression, right? People think that if I take a aggressive, almost like a violent debating point of view, that
You
I
know what's
get more.
interesting about that? I've actually found, and maybe this is like a bit of that people I know in my life, whether from school or college, wherever, who are so quiet in person are very vocal and very aggressive on social media, posting a lot, saying a lot. I'm like, and is it because they feel courage to do that publicly, not to
No,
their,
see, like I look at it more, you know, when you don't process your emotions and you're not
Yeah,
aware of
okay,
it properly,
yeah,
things
yeah,
come out
yeah,
sideways.
okay,
To me, that is
That's
just
a-
another
that's an
sideways
issue.
consequence.
okay.
You should be you. Same online, I
Yes.
mean, like ideally, when you do those
Yeah.
posts to your family and friend groups, as you are yourself.
Yeah,
Like versus like you're portraying a different version of you.
Mm.
And then you've got your version that's with people who love you and closest to you.
Mhm.
And it's really confusing, not only for them, but it's really confusing for you too, right? Because then like, you know, I kind of look at those movies where someone goes undercover and then they kind of went into the deep end where they can't come back, where they kind of became the character they actually went undercover in. Like you can get so lost that you think the true you is that online version. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the idea of integrity, the idea of authenticity is to close that gap so
Mhm.
that there, you know, when it's you.
Yeah,
Now, is there a time for you to be focused on optics? Yeah, if you're sitting down, you know, with a reporter and it's gonna publish a story, you need to have your guard up. The world's full of snipers and you don't need to go and say, well, I'm gonna
Okay,
take courage. and-
Back to this major thought though, I thought, so let's do Q and A and you guys, but this idea that it takes courage for you to listen to your own thoughts and courage to allow judgment to come, that alone, like if you actually
So
could
remember,
build that skill.
judgment comes only if you expose it, as in you fire that shot. That James Clear notion, you have to imagine success,
Mhm.
right?
So
So
you're not
take,
only exposing it to yourself, sorry, Charlie, but you're exposing it to that binary person that you're working alongside.
the binary person or
Yeah.
just, but the way I look at it is this, why it's courage is, we've used this analogy before. The world used to be like walking into a lit, like a room that's light, like full of light, like
The
lit
lights
up.
on, yeah.
Turn every light off so it's pitch black. Walk into the room. See, even the act of walking in takes courage.
Yeah.
You don't know what's in there. And then the act of actually trying to even not just step in, but maneuver, iterate, takes courage. That's why the world literally, it's like the lights went out, which is very counterintuitive given there's so much information.
Yeah.
But it kind of went out, meaning that's the feeling of ambiguity. That's the feeling of unknown. There's almost nothing that is filled with certainty. Like, you know, it was a video we're watching, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, they're the firm financially best credited with looking into the future and making the right calls. And in the interview, he talks about, I can't predict 4 inches into the future. He's like, it's that unpredictable, but they're just very good at managing their own emotion and managing like kind of what he called contingency plans. There's a whole training we do,
Mhm.
this leadership module 3 of what we call plan A to plan Z.
Yeah.
This idea of being able to think of realistic extremes to then be prepared that something in between could happen
Mhm.
and sometimes outside those extremes. Most of us don't know how to do that. So I can't tell if my worst case is actually realistic or not.
Mhm.
I can't tell if my best case is realistic or not. And so people operate in like all kinds of like horror movies combined with La La Land.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, which was the class we're gonna teach about how to store real-time memory. We create viruses in our own head without knowing it. So there's a whole class of that. But when you look at even trying to debug your own mind, right? It takes a lot of courage. And I can't tell you how much courage it takes to expose, you know, if you say something and everyone snickered, the instant feeling you have is lack of courage,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Instantly. The courage to say, can I explain to you why I said what I said? And then explain the bullet points, the stories, the examples, the details, your logic. And then as you do, they're like either scowling or snickering more, but to have the courage to still explain. Now, a lot of people have taken that as, when people dig their heels in, I call fake courage, right? Just like fake humility, fake courage. The fake courage is like, well, I'm telling you because I'm exposing it. I'm like, that's not courage. That's you just being a hothead. That's you digging your heels in. But courage will take you being calm enough to say, let me explain to you why I thought that. What is it that you're reacting to? What is wrong? This is the debugging. And you might find that they're wrong and you're right. But the courage it takes to almost scientifically expose out and debug what's going on in your head, right? That takes reps, right?
It's kind of like a reiteration of your thought, or, like,
Like,
build, like in your head,
remember
you
the
like
last
try
flip
to-
class we shared this
And
data
then,
point?
and then
that
Maisha, we'll
it
have
was-
you, we have questions on here,
So,
sorry.
so here's what's interesting. And so the punchline of how you store memory,
Mhm.
you have to be very aware of your emotions and the ones that blip, and because that's what's storing. So remember the class we taught about your mind is picking up 11 million bits of information per second. This is like an insane amount, 11, but we're only logically able to process 30 to 40. So what the hell's happening to the other like 10 million or,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
900,000? I mean, what the hell's happening to the rest,
Yeah.
right? It's your emotion that's actually processing. Like the best way to capture not the 30 to 40 you picked up. You hear someone speak and you might hear 30 to 40 words per second. The rest of it that you saw from every reaction, facial motion, whatever it might be, it's being captured through your emotion, which is our subconscious computer in our brain, which is basically wrapping what I'm seeing, matching a feeling I feel in the moment to stuff in the past. And this is
Mhm.
where if your past stuff is a virus,
Yeah.
you're gonna start building a computer that just runs without permission, which is kind of what happens often with our emotions. So the courage to say, I want to get that fixed.
Mhm.
It's a constant effort to debug our brain and what's happening. It's literally, it's a constant effort, but the courage is to expose it, to try to explain it, right? And to realize that no human being has it virus-free. No human being has stored everything. When you're storing that much information that fast,
Yeah.
with like, I don't know, the accuracy rate. The person who has not had it debugged, I would say has very low accuracy of what's stored. It's like watching a computer with just massive amount of viruses, just doing all kinds of, running like a terrorist in your head. The person who's had it debugged more is going to do much better. And you'll see that people who do it more are actually more actively doing it because they know it's lethal,
Mhm.
right?
So they feel the virus.
It's not even
Or maybe
feel,
they've
they know.
experienced that viruses have done
They just know it's
something
lethal.
Yeah.
So it's like the person who's like healthy, like, I mean, I'm not talking about the fanatic nuts who like don't enjoy life and just live through like, that kind of, like, I like the people who drink and who eat, like, but are mindful of their health. There's a diligence and routine and process they do to stay healthy.
Mm.
Other questions at all, or?
Sounds like Maisha, you're saying that answer. You can unmute if you want. You're good. She's good. She's shy. I feel like Maisha's shy, but it's okay. We're gonna get you there.
Shy just is lack of courage. We will love it. We will love it.
Oh, he said this is just the beginning for you.
So,
Yeah, Kathy, did you want to, or even Richie, like this whole notion of, did you guys want to bring that up or?
I mean, it was just about, I don't know, Richard, you want to mute, but just around the idea of our experiences with A/B testing and
Yeah.
how Richard was saying that it makes him lazier, like waiting for the data to come versus putting the shot out. And then that's making him curious for more data
Oh my
points
gosh.
to iterate faster.
Yeah. You
Oh.
said that well, Richie. He says, personal experience, A/B testing makes me lazier. I wait for data to come up versus putting one shot out makes me curious for more data points and iterate faster.
So, I have something I was gonna teach on how to give everyone courage reps. It has to do with email. email response. I think this is fascinating. I want you to first think of picking 1, 2 people at most, okay? So do not pick more than 2, but you have to pick someone, right? You want to let them know you're going to be my testing rep or my courage reps. And the way the courage reps go for email is like this. The minute you consume, as in read an email from that person, you're gonna reply with whatever your visceral reaction is as you consume that information. If not, you're gonna unread it, right? Now, the nuance in detail, in practice, is sometimes, you see an email, you open it and you read like 1 or 2 words or a line, and you'll see it's longer and you could just shut it. So meaning you have to keep your intellectual thirst like unquenched. Meaning you see an email from someone, you're like, I opened this, is there an emergency? But I haven't digested what's in there. It has to be unread, truly unread. A lot of us read it, the whole thing, and then mark it unread.
And then you're
Right?
not giving your visceral next time you respond. It's actually not visceral. It's
Because
some
now,
filtered,
second time reading it is not
you know,
visceral.
what you
right?
think you should do or say. It's awful.
So
It happens so fast.
one of the best places to test courage reps is actually your speed of response. And not chat, not Slack, but an email, because it actually reads more like it's not quite like notes in the old days of take notes. It's not quite write a paper, but it's closer to that versus text and whatnot. We tend to be more loose in just viscerally reacting. But email almost
harder, you
instantly has like, I'm writing a paper feeling.
Yeah,
Right?
so it
And
actually
so-
requires more courage than a Slack or something.
And usually even on your screen, it's just a little bit bigger than even the text box. So there's a notion we tend to not capture visceral thoughts. So the
So
rep you
harder.
want to do is this. You tell the person, and by the way, you don't have to use each other. You can tell someone and then they can pick somebody else. That's totally okay. But the point is you let them know, when I get an email from you, I am literally hitting reply, and when I literally, whatever is coming to mind, blah, 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 I'm just writing it right there and then hitting send, right? You do not get to save as draft, right? You can just read it really quick, but you must send, right? Meaning in that one setting, boom. And what you're doing is you're getting yourself the reps, the James Clear reps, of just putting out your visceral reaction and thinking and response, boom, to what you read, and you're hitting send as opposed to save as draft. And the act of someone having it is going to give you that, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I could recall that email. As you do more of it, you will see that, wait, this is a much more efficient way to act.
Mhm.
If I could act, not second guessing every thought I have, not, putting everything into drafts and drafts and drafts.
Well, this is what creates all the hesitation we were talking about. I felt like that, where it's like, I almost can't get my words out because I'm hesitating across like 30 different things. And then you just kind of get to a place where you're like, you almost can't speak.
Yeah.
Jesus, I can't get my thoughts out because
No,
I have
now-
a little draft here, a
yes.
little thought here, a little, that's where you kind of go
No.
psycho.
So when you hit send that fast, you will see sometimes they will write back a very angry note.
Yeah.
Now, if you read their angry note, you got to write back right away too, right? Remember, it's not just only one time when you sit back. No, every time from this person, you get an email, it's boom,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't type fast, use your phone, you can hit voice record, speak, and then boom, you have to hit send, right? Practice that act of hitting send quickly. And you will see it's very much like speaking with other human beings, right? You will be able to process thinking in real time faster and say it as opposed to, okay, Laura just said something, or
Yeah.
Kathy asked a question. I need to play that question in my head, then play out my response, look for editing, what's wrong in it, scrub it again before I speak. But in the meantime, I need to buy time. So I'll say, can you repeat the question? And I heard your question, but I just need to buy time.
Mhm.
Or I might just put some filler words like, there's all, versus like, boom, you go,
Yes.
right? The act of training that muscle,
Yeah.
right?
Smart.
Which, by the way, this is the whole work we did years ago with sports athletes. On the field, they have to react in real time. They don't get to say every time, okay, time out right now. I'm analyzing the situation. I need to go caucus with my coach and see what he or she thinks I should do. Then come in, analyze the play, look at some videos from the past, and then act. No, they act in real time. You're learning to train that real-time brain. So,
It's a great training ground. It's very actionable.
yes. I don't know if I forgot what the
And
question
then,
was.
and then
but-
Kathy added in, Kathy, I like what you said, just read what you said so Charlie can hear, because I feel this is like really interesting.
Yeah,
this-
so-
This motivation piece of it.
Yeah, my response to Richie was that's a true waiting and thinking, well, one of these, out of my A/B test should work versus starting the debugging process. I also find it makes me spiral more when I try multiple tries, because I'll think, well, that was all of my ideas, so now what?
I do feel that motivation piece is so like,
No.
So
right,
now
it's like
what?
you, versus if you put out your best shot and then now you're like, wait, what's wrong with it? What might not, you're starting to already think about, how could I make that better? It's almost like a natural motivator to try something and then you're naturally like, shit, it didn't work. Even if it's 20 minutes, an hour, you're already, so there's something that intrinsically you're more motivated to figure out versus when it's like you blow all your leads or you blow all your ideas and you're like, so unmotivated to like go back to the drawing board. It's like looking at like, I already,
So-
I'm done.
If you run courage reps enough, I'll tell you what confidence looks like. Nobody says no. Like, I know you think that's like kind of just jargon or ism. It's true. Nobody says no. Like, what I go through is how many reps and iterations I have to try to get them to say yes. But no today means like, I'm gonna get yes later, like tomorrow, maybe 5 minutes later. But I'm iterating, right? And I'm understanding the logic of why it was no for you. And then at some point I say, it's not worth that much effort for me to get a yes from you. Like, your yes isn't worth that much. This person's yes is much easier. So I'm like, screw that. I'd rather put my effort here.
Mhm.
Becomes this idea of agency. It's in my control of getting a yes, but I'm gonna be iterating what I say, the product, the follow-up, right? I mean, that element, that's the iteration. And whenever you look at, I mean, over the years, I've coached a lot of startups, founders. And when things don't go right, when they have to fundraise, they're about to go out of business, the number one thing always, I mean, this is always, they didn't act fast enough and bold enough. They blew precious time that was burning payroll, that was burning rent. If anything, if you ask them one wish in hindsight, they wish they had one more day, just one more try. Like, and when you sum those up, you're like, wait, you have the day now. You can try now, like, do it as if you're going out of business, right? The reps will get you to a place where you realize the biggest thing you do is blow the lead time. So, but see, the reason why it's confidence is, I don't believe you're gonna say no. And you're like, you're being delusional? I'm like, no, I have enough reps and practice. I can get everyone to say yes.
You also,
Right.
you trust and you have faith in your ability to keep iterating.
Yeah, but even use the word faith. I mean,
Yeah.
Do I sound
you
like I
go.
didn't say faith? I have faith that no one will say no to me. I'm saying, no, no one says no to me. If you say, well, I need to get someone here to an event next Thursday, I'm like, okay, but they might have a very legitimate reason, not next Thursday, but is it really about next Thursday? I want them coming here consistently. No one's gonna say no to me, right? I know how to move enough levers and find out enough. And then I might say, you know what? I thought my view of that person was this, that's not worth it, but this one was better. All right, I'm gonna put my effort there. Yes is tied to my effort, my agency. Which is why the difference is you're thinking, oh, everyone's gonna say no, all my ideas. I'm like, no, like, it's just a matter of figuring out the puzzle. Now you'll say, well, give me an example. Like the unknown, navigating unknown is I've accepted the unknown nature of it. Like, but I trust my ability to navigate that unknown. You might have accepted the unknown nature for one, and you're not trusting your ability to navigate that unknown. So instead, like other stuff fills it up.
Right.
Mental chatter, negative chatter, like, I'm like, I look at variations, I'm like, that's like the same thing. You just sent 6 versions of the same thing. And you're like, no, it's different. I'm like, that's not. If you do the squint test on something, they all look the same, right? Like, There-
Accepting the unknown and trusting your ability to navigate the unknown. Accepting the unknown and trusting your ability to navigate. All right.
That's good, Charlie. We could probably go a whole nother hour.
no,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
telling you, the power of iteration is like, once you taste the skill of iteration.
Yeah.
You're like, it's only
It's
about
my-
just
I-
repping the iterations.
yes.
I mean, AI
And so by the
coach,
way, iteration comes with debugging, which is where now I have in my head too. You can't iterate if you don't debug.
I mean, if AI
So
coach
you
was,
can't iterate. If you don't
I'm
debug
saying-
your brain and
Right.
remind what's happening, you
Right.
can't,
Stay
you can't
stuck.
effectively iterate.
I mean,
Which means you have to be able to go through your own shit, which means you need courage to do that. And if you're not doing it, then that means you must be getting results. If you're not getting results, you need to keep iterating. If the iterations aren't leading to results, you need to debug, right? I mean,
and I'm
like,
saying in the example of AI coach, what you guys don't see is how many hundreds of notes where I treated AI coach like talking to a lazy, like never listening intern. I mean, but one that can't sue you, right? So like, I mean, I was chewing out the AI coach, different parts, and then sharing like how I was fixing with our engineering team so they can actually see every use case of how it was being like iterated or
Yeah.
beaten to the right place, right? Fighting. Like every knife fight, every, like aspect of a warrior hitting this, like lazy, like irresponsible intern. That was actually shared and that's what you're getting right now. Like-
It's funny, Charlie, because you speak about this warrior and this cow and this lion and this farmer. Like the farmer outside has tons of fruits and vegetables and produce. The warrior needs to go and do this in order to eat.
Right.
So I think a lot of what you're kind of not saying is like your perspective as to why you don't get a no. Why are you so intent in getting and accomplishing your goals, right?
Mhm.
And what's what's the drive behind that? And I think that that's kind of like the one piece we maybe didn't touch a lot on today.
Yeah.
Helps you continue to
And
iterate
think
and
about,
pursue.
and I mentioned the bursty progress, right? Hunters work like that. Farmers are watching incremental, and there's an expectation that this lettuce is gonna grow bigger, and if it's not, what's wrong with it, right? Hunters don't work that way. Like, you don't know what's gonna be out there. So you're always prepared to be a warrior. When you go, you'll have moments of just we're napping and just, tired. But then so in the middle of the nap, you hear like, I don't know,
well, I think some of
Very
this
good or
food,
something like that.
Yeah.
then you're like, gazelle's going down, right?
Yeah, because that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I was napping, but I'm here for that gazelle.
Yeah, but
So I'm gonna jump up
I
and
just
get
think about like, I'm not even sure that's like that narrative is even going through. It's just kind of, it gets so trained, it's innate. And like, I know that's how you win. Like, it's like I said, it's not linear and precision, it's linear directional. But like there's a part where the single biggest ingredient is the individual and their ability to move rapidly, right? With like a boldness and with speed. So, all right. Hope that class was helpful.
Yeah. Good to see
Just-
everybody.
Put the mindset of the hunter, right? And the lion, right? Lions get to nap. If you watch them, they just look like very happy. Napping, paws in the air, in the sun, in the shade, goofing around with each other, right? Like, or you can be a cow who's always scared for your life and waiting for some coyote to come eat you, right? On that
Oh, yeah.
vegetarian diet, but nothing wrong with that. But
Yeah, we were saying last night, if you saw the Cruise movie,
Oh, yeah.
they actually have to,
Yes.
hunt, right? Because they're cavemen and they're not gonna eat if they don't do it, but it's kind of funny, we were joking last night, Tom just reminded me. At the beginning of it, it actually says, never not be afraid, which means be afraid all the time, right? Of course, the dad learns at the
Yeah.
end, you can't operate like that, you can't live like that, you can't always be afraid, you gotta like try, so anyways, when you see them like hunting, it's awesome, it's like, they're just like, they just go nuts, right? Like the babies hunting and fighting, it's like, it's an awesome movie.
But it's a cartoon,
It's a
but I
cartoon,
love
but
that the
Never not be
cartoon.
afraid.
Never not be afraid.
Yeah.
Never not be
Yeah.
afraid.
That was the chant, right?
It's a chant, never not be afraid. We
Which
do this
is-
as a family, which is kind of like, once they do learn it, it's like the lions, right? Like I think you were saying, Charlie, how you said it, was like the lions don't eat every day, but they go as a pack, right? Like they fight as a pack and then they lay down. That's actually what the cavemen, they have to do, right? They go out like a pack, a whole family, and then they go and eat, and then that's it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, the movie Crudes is a cartoon, but it's based on like life and death when
It
you
is.
actually are afraid.
Yes.
Most of the stuff now is ego, right?
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
just hurting our
It's actually not
ego.
life and death.
And everyone is so consumed with their own fragile ego,
Yeah.
they don't even remember your stuff. And the amount of information is moving so fast, you're old news, like by 2 minutes. So there's a part where we've overdone the always be afraid, right? So, all right.
Okay, you guys, we'll see you next week for the test kitchen, actually. I don't know what we're doing, but next week we have a big poker tournament. I don't know what
Yes.
Jenny will be teaching or on food, but we will see you, but we will not be teaching. Chef Danny and Tom will be teaching something,
Yes.
so.
Something in
Anyways,
food.
something on food, something awesome, something
Oh,
awesome.
and then, I don't know if we told you last time, but we have this amazing May 1,
We
first
mentioned
Thursday.
it, yeah.
Oh, we did? Okay.
A micro
We
plat.
didn't
We
know.
didn't-
Oh,
Had
did
it
you?
already gone lit? I don't
No,
remember.
so
Oh.
Oscar-winning movie director we got introduced to, he made the movie Game Changers, how plant-based diets happened, and then got an Oscar for The Cove. So we're gonna feature his newest film, which is on microplastics.
I
So he's
saw
got the best scientists in the world, and we'll be bringing some of them and doing a whole movie with food pairing May 1. I think we put seats up on our site. I think it's sold out in like few minutes. So we only have a few VIP guests invites left now.
So cool. What a
It should be cool
topic.
though. It's gonna be
Yeah.
very, very cool. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you should check out the website. Kathy built this. Actually really good. Like, she imagined success and made that. The last time versions.
Craig, you're close by. You're in New Jersey. Might sure you're in New Orleans. It's a little bit far, but it's still doable, right?
Yeah. No, Mega's the one who holds the purse strings to VIP invites. So if you want, email Megachar and she might make an
Is that
exception.
right? Did I have it?
I say
Somebody
yes
over
to
here-
everyone
now,
and
man,
Megan
you
says.
do now.
You might think he's in charge, but,
I say yes usually, and then Megan looks at me with that little head shaking move, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
I love it.
That
I'm
would be a no.
sorry. I love it. Oh, FAA stabilization. I see.
a
I
great
know,
website.
I know.
Yeah, that might not happen, but train, take Amtrak.
Train, Amtrak is awesome.
Make a long,
They had
long trip.
Amtrak from New Orleans to here.
Of course. Make it.
I don't know how straight line it is, but. All right, you guys,
Okay.
see you.